Okay, so it's been 2 weeks, and this is our last session on this parak before Pesach. Um, we're gonna not return to after Pesach, but so last time we did our own theory, and it worked out, and it was good. I'm not going to review it now, but I got to explain to you what happened when I was preparing for this year. So I only prepared for this right before with my chavrusa. We started to go through the Radak and found like halfway through our learning that we would not finish the Radak, which meant that we would not be able to finish the Radak here. We also found that it did seem to be somewhat consistent with the approach that we took, even though we're not sure because we didn't finish it. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to do a isolated point from the Radak, and then an isolated point from the Elia de Nola from Sforno student, and then I want to do the Malbim. Okay. We decided to go to the Malbim because Malbim usually has like a refreshingly different approach. And also the Malbim is oddly short on this parak. Usually Malbim does like every single pasuk and every single word, but it's short enough that we could do it all in one shot. Okay, so let me show you the Radak, and I'm going to use the Al Torah one, or sorry, not the Al Torah one, the Torah's Chaim one, because that's the reliable one. Um, the more reliable of the ones. So I just want to focus on the pshat, he says. So he quotes a midrash. So he says, Ulfia pshat, so he's explaining why there are kilo and chasdos at the end of every single thing. Okay. Which I can't remember if we gave a positive, like an actual explanation for why it has to repeat, or not why it has to repeat, but why it repeats. I just don't remember what we said. But he says, each one has its own idea in its place. And there are 26 based on the topics that are mentioned in the Mizmor. So that's in contrast to, he quoted a midrashic thing that says, I forgot if I said this last time, that there's 26 generations from the creation of the world until Matan Torah, and the entire world was sustained in the Zuchus, or in Chesed before that. And I think we noted that it doesn't really make sense because the Mizmor continues. First of all, it doesn't mention Kabbalah Torah, and it continues beyond that. So, like, I don't get what the Midrash is doing, but so he's saying, in contrast to that, which attaches significance to the 26, here he's saying, no, there are 26 topics, and like, it just happens to be there's 26 kilo and chasdos because there's one for each one. Okay, fine. So then he says, V'amar tchila, hodu Hashem, kulchem, all of you should give thanks to Hashem. Klomar, kol b'nei ha'olam, the entire world, not just Klal Yisrael. Hodu Hashem, ki tov hu umitiv lo'olam, because he is good and he benefits the world. V'chasdo hagadol ein lo hefsek, and his great chesed does not cease, has no interruption. Ki la'olam hu, because it is forever. So in other words, he's trying to see what we're giving thanks on by saying what chesed is forever. So the closest chesed we can find that's forever is the sustenance of the universe, because he created it and it's going on forever. I mean, as long as he wills it, as opposed to all the chasadim that are enumerated within the thing. So the big chesed is the universe that continues to exist. So it mentions God's great chesed with each and every one in order to magnify the shavach. So the question is, what do we get from what he's telling us here about, like, what are we supposed to think about at the kilolam chasdo of each and every one? Oh, I don't know what we said. I'll just to contrast with what we said. I think what we said, correct me if I'm wrong or reinforce me if I'm right, is that our theory, our basic approach was there's the tov of Ma'aser Bereishis, and then there's all the tovos that God does for us. And the mistake is to think about the tovos that God does for us, for Klal Yisrael, in isolation. And what we really have to remember is that the tov that he does for us is only to bring us to the tov of the entire universe, and for us to like be mashlim that, like to complete that. And that's why at the very end it goes back to Ho'du L'Kal Hashmaim Kilo Chasdo. But the point there was that each of the cheseds that it's talking about is the same kind of chesed as the chesed of Ma'aser Bereishis, which is an undeserved hatava, like an undeserved goodness. So in other words, it's reminding us that God's creation of the world was not owed to anyone, and the same thing with the tovos that he does for us, but it's all to bring us in line with that ultimate tov. So that's what we said. But the question is, what is he saying here? I don't know if this is another hint, but he goes on to explain stuff, and he repeats this thing about the cume of the world with Ein La Hefsek. So he says, for example, um, yeah. Oh, so here's a good example, by the way. La'ose niflaos. Achar sheyizkir hamalachim v'hagalgalim. So that's what he learns. The Hodu la'lukei ha'elohim is the malachim. Hodu la'adonei ha'adonim is the galgalim. Uh, and then he said, oh, sorry, he quotes two interpretations. Then he goes to his. He says, oh, I might as well read it. Amar la'ose la'horos ki enam kadmonim kmoshu kadmon. So it is saying la'ose that he makes these things to show that they are not eternal as he is eternal. Elashem alulim v'hu ila lehem. They are caused and he is their cause. Kmoshu philosophim, like the philosophers say. Lefikach amar la'ose la'lamed she'enam kadmonim. Ela hu ose osam hu chidasham. He created them anew. Okay. And then he goes and he says, I thought he said in la hefsek here. Maybe I'm thinking of a different pasuk. Hold on. Talk to him. Oh yeah, here he is. So sorry. So he gives his interpretation here. He says, so he quotes Ibn Ezra, who says that niflaos does not mean wonders. It means hidden things. So he says, of near be'enai, where is it? Oh, Vanir be'enai, it seems to me, ki amar la'ose niflos kadolos levado al tsura she'enam gufos velo bigufos of hemaschalim hanifradim. So he says the hidden things are the angels that are not bodies and they're not in bodies. They're hidden from man's eye. Man can only perceive what's physical. And then what about the spheres? They're made out of a fine substance, the fifth element. And man can grasp them with his eye. But the tsuros that have no matter, which is the angels, man cannot grasp them. Sorry, man can't perceive them, and even his mind's eye has difficulty grasping them. That's why he calls them great hidden things. He mentions alone because God alone is exalted above them. Oh, here we go. This is what I want to get to. Talk to him. Everything else is beneath them. And they are the, explain lashon. Heim kiyum ha'olam. They are the sustaining of the world. Biraton hakel yisbarach shesam osam ish al makomo haroy lo. God placed each one of them in its proper place. Lefikach amar kilo lam chasdo. That's why he says kilo lam chasdo. Ki hine heim chesed hakel abruav. They are God's chesed over his creations. V'heim le'olam. And they are forever. Ein lahem hefsek. So he goes through this. The universe has ein lahem hefsek. God is maintaining it constantly. So what does he want us to think about whenever we punctuate everything with kilo lam chasdo?
Constantly repeating it, like chesed is constant.
Right, exactly. So it's like there's got to be a fancy poetic term for this, but there's like a like you're symbolically reinforcing the point by mentioning kilo and chasdo, that for example, if just to contrast it with a finite chesed, God took us out of Mitzrayim. So it'd be great if we talked about it a lot, but like it was in the past and it happened and it's over. Okay. And you can talk about the effects or whatever, but you only need to mention it once. But this is a chesed that is constant. So like every moment the chesed is in operation, and you're driving that point home by saying kilo and chasdo after every single thing you mention. And the thing that I think is different here is that, I mean, it's kind of it runs alongside our theory, but when you mention lamake mitzrayim b'v'chorehim, kilo lam chasdo is not referring to that chesed. It's referring to the chesed hagadol. It's referring to the fact that the entire universe is sustained by God. And so you have this effect of constantly, you start off with the universe that God created is with chesed. Then you go to the galgalim and the angels, and it's chesed he's maintaining them. And the ose shemaim bisvuna, kilo chasdo. Then you're zooming into the little things on earth, and zooming back to the chesed of the Shemayim, so back and forth and back and forth. So I just thought that was an interesting point. And it does go back to what I was quoting from the Rambam last time of Olam Chesed Yibaneh, but this seems to be referring to not the act of creating the world initially, but the continual maintenance of the world. The Hilchos Yesodei Torah, halachos aleph through hey. So I thought that was just an interesting standalone point. Levado. Yeah. Okay. Other side point, this one's for Rabbi Fader and Rabbi Zimmer. There is a reference to fine tuning in Ovadia in Eli de Nola. Okay, how so? So he says, "La'ose hashemayim bisvuna," who makes the heavens with understanding. She'ilu hayo yoser gedolim me'at. If the heavens were just a little bit bigger, hagalgalim hayu ma'akvim zeh b'tenuasam. The spheres would inhibit each other in their motion. Because remember, they held that all the changes on Earth happen because of the motion of the spheres. So like the machinery would get jammed, basically. Vafilu kechut hasara, even a hair's breadth. Okay. Ilu hayu yosek ktanim, and if they were a little bit smaller, haya rekos nimtza. Then I don't know if that means that they'd be empty, or there would be there would be space. There'd be space between them. There'd be like a rake, I think, like a space between the spheres, as opposed to, like, in other words, they would not interact in the way that they're supposed to. Nimsa sha'asam bitvuna. So constantly he made them with tvuna, which here he seems to be using like in terms of like precision, precise intelligence. Kamosha Amar Hanavi Kore Ani Alehem Yamdu Yachdav. Kasher Yafir Pirsh Hagaon B'Sefer Or Amim Shlo. So Sforno says this in his More Nevuchim Sashmayim. So I thought that was just a nice little standalone point that obviously we don't hold by the celestial spheres, but we do hold this about the fine tuning of the universe, that everything needed to be exactly correct in order for the universe that we have to be in existence. Okay. Okay. All right, so now we're going to turn to the Malbim, and like I mentioned, the Malbim is usually longer, but surprisingly short, and I don't know what to make of that. And Ken and I only ended up learning the Malbim for half an hour because we did the Radak for the first part, so we have an approach, but we really need to work on it here, okay? So this is going to be contingent on us figuring it out. Okay. Hodu. Achar shetziva aha hilul v'habracha. So after he commanded us on the praise and the bracha, which I think is reference to the previous parak says, Hallelujah, Hallelu es Shem Adonai, Hallelu Avdi Adonai. Okay, so that is Hillel, and then it ends with Baruch Hu Ad Hashem B'Tzion Shochim B'Yushalayim Hallelujah. So that's Hillel in the bracha. Okay, I don't know what his idea for the parak was, but after commanding us on Hillel and the bracha, Siva al HaHodah, he commands us on giving thanks. Lahodos ala tovos shekiblu. I don't know if this is a typo. I think it's supposed to be shekiblu mimenu, that we to thank God on the goods that we got from Him. Shezem mitzad tuva v'chasadav. This is from His goodness and His chesed, His chasadim. V'chasadim elehem laolam, and these chasadim are forever. Bein be'es sheyanhig es haolam al pi hanhagas ateva, whether at a time that He rules the universe or governs the universe through natural governance, laws of nature, being kishamanhig al pi hanhagas haniflaos, or whether He governs the universe through the governance of wonders. Now, this, I'm just going to translate this here as miraculous governance. I think that's what he means by niflaos, because he keeps contrasting it with teva. Shehim shnei hanhagos shetzien v'meshakasav Hashem shimcha la'olam Hashem zichcha l'dor v'dor. These are the two types of rulership that are referenced in what is written. Hashem, your name is forever. Hashem, your memory is for generation to generation. Do you know where that is? Is that in the previous pasuk? Yes, it is. Yud Gimel. So I just want to see what he says in Yud Gimel here. Hashem shimcha la'olam Hashem zichcha l'dor v'dor. So the Malbim there says Hashem shimcha la'olam Ratzlam Rechine Re'inu mi'itcha shnei minei hanhagos. We see two types of governance. Hanhaga hamisuderes mishishis me'breshis, a type of governance that is ordered from the 6 days of creation. V'zenikra Shem Hashem. That's interesting. That's called the Shem Hashem. Kihu Hashem shebo noda tamin me'olam v'ad olam b'li hishtanus. That's the name of Hashem through which He's known in the world continually without change. And then the second is Hanhaga hanisis, the miraculous governance, hamischadeshes be'es min ha'itim, which is renewed from time to time. Josh, you know we're not there, right? We're not. Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, yeah. I don't know if you were looking for it. So the miraculous governance, which is like infrequent from time to time, and that's your zecher. Kamisha osem ma'ase gadol lefi sha'a kadeshi yizachru bo. So not zecher remembrance, but zecher like uh what's a good word? Not mention. Is there a better word for this? Recognition, maybe? Yeah. That someone does something ma'ase gadol so that people will recall him or recognize him and mention him. That's not established forever, without change. Raku lador vador. It's from generation to generation. Shan hagas hanes hu rak lefi hador lefi atzorach b'chol dor. So that's from a generation to generation basis. Okay, so those are the two ways God governs the world. Okay, so he's saying both of those chasadim are forever. Okay, now right away we have a problem, especially because of what we just read. What's the problem saying that both of them are forever?
Well, they're temporary, right?
Yeah, the miracles are temporary, right? So what does it mean that it's forever? Okay, right. So that question hold on the side burner because he's going to answer that later on. Vihine al hanhaga al pi hateva amar. So regarding the natural governance, he says, now he knocks off two pesukim at once. Hodu lo keha Elohim neha. Okay, now there's a nice methodological point that comes from here. Okay, ki hanhaga hativis, the natural governance, tsianu haumos hakadmonim, the ancient non-Jews conceived of them or depicted them shehim alide Elohim va'adanim, as if they were run through rulers and masters. Shema kochavim v'hamazalos, which are the spheres of the stars and the constellations. Shehim hayuladatam adonai haaretz v'hamoshlim. According to their opinion, they were the rulers of the land and the lords of the land and the rulers. Malachim and the angels, hamanhigim es hamarachos, that governed the constellations. Shem hayuladatam Elohim la'adonai ha'ele. They were rulers or gods over these masters. Umashpim alehem koach v'otzma, and they were the ones who bestowed the capacity and the power. Al pi zeh amar, based on this, then the Mizmor said, Sharashem hu hanosin koach el hamalachim. He's the one who gives power to the malachim. V'hanhaga v'adnus el ha'adonim, and governance and lordship to the lords. Hakol al pi kocho v'hanhagaso, all through his power and his hanhaga. Okay, so first of all, methodologically, what do I like about this? what is interesting that he's doing here? Or what is he claiming that Tehilim is doing? Right. So he's saying that Tehilim is speaking according to the belief systems of back then, you know. So I do think that's very interesting because I mean this is a whole obsession. Should I use obsession? No. It's a whole exploration of mine, which is that this principle of dibra Torah kol Adam. So if you look, anyone know where that principle originates or how it was used originally? So it's in the Drashos Shator Nidrashos, or the Midrash Shator Nidrashos Behen, and it was only used to talk about whether the words that are, when you're darshaning Torah, whether you can use normal language or assume that there's like normal language. Okay, that's a very, very oversimplified version of it. Okay, so that was level one. Okay, Rambam then extended it to anthropomorphism. Okay, now obviously the Torah does use anthropomorphism, but the Rambam is the first one who used dibra Torah kol Adam in that way as a phrase. Yeah, right. Okay, then you have Ibn Kaspi, who used it for like figures of speech, like hyperbole. Now, again, Chazal also say that the Torah speaks in hyperbole, but using that phrase, dibra Torah kol Adam, is like, this is how people talked. And then Shadal, I'm not saying these are the only four. These are like, in my mind, this is the hierarchy. Shadal goes so far as to say that, Shadal and modern academics say that the Torah is speaking in the language and with the conceptions that the people had back then. So let's say, for example, easy examples, especially if you went to Yehuda's shiur on Sunday, talking about the what's the phrase in Dalsei Mizrach, right? Like opening the doors and the windows of the heavens and stuff like that, you know? So like if you find a phrase like that in Tanakh, okay, I don't know where there are phrases like that in Tanakh, but like, or let's say even like the Rakia or, things like this, which we know are not not real. Okay, so some people are disturbed by that, like how can it be that the Torah could use these phrases if they're not scientifically accurate, or arba konfos haaretz, or like with the flood, like that the flood went over the entire world, right? So Shadal is of the opinion, and the academics are of the opinion, and I'm of the opinion that the Torah and the Nevi'im did utilize the conceptions of the world back then, So I think this is interesting. I don't know if he's claiming that David is like like using their terminology in order to refute them, because he does say, it does come back obviously and say that God is the one who gives them power, uh, or if he is saying that like no, they really did think that there were angels and lords over these things, and we now know that this is not the case. But his apologetic language um I don't know, I don't want to call it apologetic, but like saying like back then they thought, So I just think that's a very, very interesting way to put it. So I just thought that was interesting. Okay, but the point he's making though is, what is this attempting to do? What are these two psukim attempting to do? What's the point of them? I don't think it's a crazy like radical idea.
That shows in chart.
Yeah, I can have you more specific than that. Yeah.
Saying that is the source of power, that he gives like the Malachim power, then the Malachim can give the spheres or the stars power. He's saying that each thing that has power is directly from God.
Okay, correct, right. So notice you got this functioning machinery, okay, and lest you think, see, those things, the machinery of nature is ruling over and causing all the changes,
Right.
but lest you think that the power comes from them, it's coming from Hashem. It's being supplied by Hashem, and all of it is running through that. So it is kind of like the equivalent of we say that you should not say kochi v'otzim yadi asali asachayil. You should also not say ko cham v'otzim yadam, meaning the heavenly powers is running the world. It's really from Hashem. Okay, yeah, and yeah. Okay. So that's the interesting thing, right? Is that he does not explain here how it's chesed. Okay, and it's also not entirely clear if he is working with a specific definition of chesed or whether he's just using it as a synonym for tov, right? Tuva v'chasdo, chasadav. Okay, so for now, let's just assume he's using it as just a good thing that God does. Okay, all right, onward. La'ose. Now check out what he does. Okay, now we're at la'ose hashrayim bisvuna. So I would have thought that this is still in the natural framework, but no. V'neged ha'hanhaga ha'pila'is. Okay, so now corresponding to the miraculous governance, shezeh ein nase klal ayde malach o galgal. This is not done at all through a malach or a galgal. Rak me Hashem levado, but it's Hashem alone. Amar shahaniflaos gedolos ose levado. He says that the niflaos gedolos God does alone, meaning miracles he does alone. Shelo be'emtzaos ha'elohim va'adonim, not through the Elohim and the Adonim. Ki az meshadid es kocham, because then he overrides their power, v'yafli plaos b'kocho hagadol, and does wonders with his great koach. Okay, now I read this and I was disturbed. Anyone else disturbed?
I mean, is he saying that Hashem like does something like physically? I don't know, like.
Oh yeah, right. What makes it sound like he's saying that?
Well, he's overriding the forces that usually do things. Doesn't that mean like there's the forces that do things, and then Hashem that also like interacts with the things and does things.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna make it a little less abstract. Hold on a second. Does maybe because we're at this time of year, but did anyone have a this time of year phrase come into their mind when they read Neged ha'anhaga ha'pilais shezeh ein nase klal ayde malach? Yeah, Machas Bechoros, right? So Machas Bechoros in the Haggadah, we quote the Mechilta and we say Lo Ayde Malach. Let me just quote it from the actual Haggadah on Torah. By the way, now I don't know. It's possible it had this last year. I just don't remember. Torah. Oh, Moshe, this is for you, Moshe 11. Torah has now Let me find it. Hold on. It has Haggadah's Eretz Yisrael, which is like their super, ancient Nusach collection siddur, kind of like the siddur Arba Kantos Aretz. Okay, but they have it for the Haggadah also. So rejoice. But you can unmute and say yay later. Okay, so what's the drasha here? So the drasha is Viyosi Hashem Mitzrayim lo aide malach lo aide saraf lo aide shaliach, not through an angel, not through a fiery angel, and not through a shaliach, through an emissary. I looked up the English word emissary, by the way, and the etymology is send out. So emissary probably is the best word for shaliach, in case you need a way to say it. Okay. Ela HaKadosh Baruch Hu bichvodo uva'atmo, okay, or bichvodo, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu in his glory. Shnemar vavarti be'eretz Mitzrayim b'layl hazev v'kisi kol b'chor be'eretz Mitzrayim mi'adama behema uv'chol Elohim Mitzrayim eser shvatim ani Hashem vavarti be'eretz Mitzrayim ani v'lo malach v'kisi kol b'chor be'eretz Mitzrayim ani v'lo sav uv'chol Elohim Mitzrayim eser shvatim ani v'lo shaliach ani Hashem ani hu v'lo acher. Okay, so this is saying the Malchus Bechoros is through Hashem. Now, getting ahead of myself here, okay. Anyone have a problem with this passage in the Haggadah? If you've been around the block, you'll have a problem with it. Yeah.
I mean, my problem with it was always what I was just saying.
Yeah.
That like Shem acts in the world through intermediaries.
Yeah. Right. Okay, good. So the problem is, and I'm open to this being challenged, either Bichlal or my understanding of the Rambam. I'm under the impression God does everything through Malachim. Okay. And the clearest statement from the Rambam and Chazal is in his chapter on Malachim, which is, I'm reading the Kafach in 2:6. So he says, so we're talking about these separate intelligences, which is what Aristotle called them. We're only talking about the malachim, which are the separate intellects. The Torah does not deny that God governs existence through malachim. When the Torah says, "Let us make man in our tzelem," and it says, "Come, let us descend," using the plural, Shem Lashon Rabim, Amru, Kivyachol, She'en HaKadosh Baruch Hu Osa Davar, God does not do anything, Ad Shemistakel B'Pamalia Shamala, until he literally contemplates with the heavenly host. V'hispalem al Amra Mistakel. Be astonished, appreciate the word mistakel, contemplate. Ki b'lashon zeh atmo Omer Aplaton, Ki Hashem mistakel ba'olam haschalim v'shofas mimenu hamatiros. Plato himself said that God contemplates the world of ideas, the world of intelligences, and the existence emanates from there. God doesn't do anything without consulting the heavenly retinue. Upamaya hu hatzava b'lashon yavan. Pamaya is Greek for the army or the legion. Uvabreshis rabba nemar od. Koheles, it says in Koheles, that which they have already done. Asahu lo nemar ela asuhu. It doesn't say that God has done. It says the angels, says they have done. Kivyachol hu ubeis dino. God and his beis nimnu al kol aver ve'aver. Were appointed on each and every limb that is in you. V'hoshiva oso al kano, and established it in the proper place. Shnemar hu asacha v'yichonenecha. V'nemar od b'breshis rabba kol makom shenemar vadoshem hu beisino. Okay, any time it says and Hashem, it means God and his based in. Okay, and then he says, don't think that it means that. Okay, I'll read the last part because of the famous line. This is not what the fools think. Shish sham diboris ala o machshava, that God is speaking or thinking, right? O rayon, or thought, o eta, or advice, v'hiz arus b'rayon hazulas, that God is like being assisted by someone else's thoughts. How can God be assisted by what he creates? Yeah, I know Sam Altman can be assisted by his AI, but that's because he's not entirely creating it himself. Okay, el kol ze bir kiafilu prati hamatzius. I think I'm going to go on record. That was the first more Nebuchim Sam Altman AI God angel reference in history. Okay, just in case anyone's keeping the score. Afilu brias evrei balei hachaim kfi shein. So all the particulars of existence, even the creation of the limbs of animals as they are, kol zeh b'emtzas malachim. Everything is through angels. Ki kol kochos malachim, because all forces are angels. Okay, so the problem, I know we're going into Haggadah stuff, but that's where my mind is right now. So the problem is, how can we say that God did Malchus Bechoros, not Aidei Malach? Everything is through a Malach. And then how can the Malbim say that God does miracles alone without Malachim if everything is done through Malachim? Okay, and if you're going to prod me and say, well, maybe they're not done through Malachim, like maybe this is an exception. So I'll answer you by answering my students' questions. So we've been talking about Malachim for the last weeks now, okay? And I'll get the question many times. You're telling me that God does everything through Malachim, but why can't we say that? Why does God need to do everything through Malachim? Why can't he do it himself? How would you answer that? I know I'm kind of springing this on you, and we're all at different places holding about Malachim, yeah. And this is, I think what you were saying earlier is the answer to this, by the way.
Okay. I mean, I'm not sure if this is right, but maybe I would say like, what it means to do things through Malachim is that to do things through causes in reality.
Yeah.
And things don't occur without a cause.
Exactly. Okay, good. That's exactly it, which is that it's absurd to say that God does something without Malachim, because Malachim, the way I explain this in my shiur, you can listen to the shiur series of Malachim. The way Rambam understands Malach really is any agent or instance of causality. Anything can be called Malach or function in the capacity of Malach. So to say how, couldn't God do it without Malachim is like saying, could God do cause and effect without cause and effect? Like, no, through causality is how the universe exists in a cause and effect framework. So God does everything through cause and effect, and we call those things Malachim. So it's an absurdity to say that God would do something alone. So now the question is, so what do we mean that God does that? Either God did Malchus Bechoros without a malach, or what does the Malbim mean by God does these things without a malach? Yeah.
Two options. I don't know if either of them.
Okay, good.
One is that it's not like God can't do things without like I don't know, maybe you were saying that God can't do things without.
I was saying that, yeah, but you can theorize otherwise. I'm not. By the way, I think there are people who would disagree and say that God could do stuff directly.
I would think why can't God say, now this thing happened. The thing has changed now. Like reality is different in that spot
right.
It just is.
Yeah.
You don't really
right. I mean, if you could do creation yesh me'ayin, because the creation yesh me'ayin was not through Malachim. That is one thing God did himself. Is that because the Malachim are created, so you can't say he created Malachim with Malachim. Yeah, right. So in principle, I agree that could happen.
The other possibility is that it means there was a cause, but it's like a completely unknowable cause that no one can like neutrinos hit them and they died because of it. Yeah.
Okay, good. So that is how I that's my favorite answer as well. So I saw this thanks to the Masifta Haggadah, I saw this in the Das Zakanim so this is another classic question. If God is doing this himself, then what does it mean? V'lo yitin hamashchis lavo el batechem lingov. God will not allow the mashchis to enter into your house to destroy. That makes it sound like he was destroying through a mashchis, okay? Masifta Haggadah has 13 answers to that, 11 answers, whatever. First one is the Das Zakanim, who says, Kasha laharav Moshe, I don't know which Rav Moshe this is, Taha b'Haggadah ksiv avarti be'eretz Mitzrayim, ani v'lo malach. Okay, that's the Kasha. Yishlomar dahaki pirusha. This is what, I'm going to read it and I'll tell you what I think it is. Ani bichvodi v'gam hamalach. So I in my glory and also malach. V'lo hamalach levado, ki lo yitaret kin shi HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'lo malach. Okay, so I think what he's saying is, it obviously means God and the malach, because you can't say that God did something without a malach. But what it means is Hashem bichvodo. Okay, so what does that mean? So I believe I've heard Rabbi Chait say this, that in the Haggadah, what it means, lo aidei malach, means that all the other makos you could chalk up to just being anhaga tivis. Okay, but nature does not target firstborns. Okay, and yes, there are Rishonim who hold that that was a natural thing, and Ibn Kashbi holds that it killed things other than firstborns also. And he says, just all the firstborns, every firstborn, that's just an exaggeration. But what? It sounds like him, right? I don't know what he does. So what does it mean that ani v'lo malach? It means that it was evident that it was God. It was ani bichvodi v'lo malach, meaning that it was clear that it was not being done through independently operating malachim. This was God controlling them, and I think you can say that that's what the Malbim meant, and I don't think this is forcing it into the Malbim. I think when it says, so it doesn't, when you first read it, it sounds like he's saying God does this without a malach, but then he says, Ki az mishadid es kocham v'yafli plos b'kocho hagadol. I think the way to interpret this is when God does miracles, he's wielding the laws of nature in ways that are not based on their hanhaga teva, which is not possible for them to do. So the only one who can control nature is God. Laws of nature cannot manipulate each other or manipulate themselves in ways that are unusual. So it was God who was doing that. So only God is and this is just a natural continuation of the first point, that only God is the Elokei ha-Elohim, and so only he can do wonders with them. Now, is that what Malbim means? I don't know his metaphysics, so I don't know if he holds that God really can do stuff directly, but if the Malbim is going to be consistent with this premise, I think you could read the Malbim that way. Yeah, and that's how I want to read it in terms of the parak.
Yeah. I think it's Rabbi Moshe Mikutsi.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that's my guess.
Baltosvos, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now onward. Okay. We're at La'ose Hashemaim Bisfuna. Choser El Hanhagas Hateva. This goes back to the Hanhagas Hateva. I felt vindicated at this point in my methodology of Tehilim, because if you'll remember, I don't know which last parak we did that we had this, is in my pivot point theory, we have several variants of pivot point. One of them is the hinge, where you have a shared pasuk that goes on both halves. Another one is the like what we have here is you start theme A and then theme B, and then at the very end you go back. But then you have what I call the Venetian blind prakim, where you have A, B, A, B, A, B, where you switch back and forth throughout the parak. And look what he's doing. He's clearly saying, by the way, I mean, I should have said this before. What is his pivot? His pivot is Hanhagas Ateva and Hanhagas Haniflaos, right? So he starts off, Aleph through Gimel is Hanhagas Ateva. Daled is Hanhagas HaPilais. Hey through Vav is Hanhagas Ateva again, So he holds that you can go back and forth between the two themes. All right, so Esar Shemaim Asa Betuna, Ukvar Bi'arnu Zeb Pirish Mishle, Shabakama Mukumati Yachas HaChachma El Brias Haaretz. Vatvuna el Malachas Hashmaim. So he doesn't quote it there, but what he's referring to is Mishlei Gimel. Mishlei Gimel is Gimel Yotes Adoshem b'Chachma Yasad Aretz Kone Shemaim Bitvuna. Okay, so the Aretz is Chachma, the Shemaim is Tvuna, and then he says, so this is his definition. I'm not familiar with this firsthand, but he says, Ki Chachma Tavchim Ben Tov L'Ra. Chachma involves distinctions between Tov and Ra. Okay, Vatvuna Tavchim Bein Emes V'Sheker. Okay, and if you're familiar with the Rambam's Tov Ra Emes V'Sheker in the More Nevuchim second chapter, fundamental distinction. Okay, but
using that same definitions of Tov Ra?
I don't know, but I learn it that way. Yeah, I don't know.
Rambam prescription.
Yeah, exactly. What am I supposed to do? Okay. V'Hashemaim Him Kayamim Be'ish. I don't know what he means by Hashemaim Kayamim Be'ish. Usually Be'ish means like as an entity or as a phenomenon on its own. I'm not sure what he's getting at here. It's also weird. Hashmaim kayamim be'ish ve'in sham mitzius tov ra. But his point is that there's no tov and ra in the Shemaim. Okay, back then they thought that there's no tov, that the heavens are made of a different substance and operate based on different things. The way we would say this now is that there's no ra in the laws of nature. Okay, Ra is only on the physical in the physical changing world. Yeah, Isaiah.
The mom wasn't that long ago.
No, he wasn't.
He would have pulled like that. You think? Like,
that what? Oh, that the heavens are made of a different substance.
Yeah.
Well, that's the interesting thing. So yeah, you're right. He might not hold that, but he. No. Yeah, that's a good point. I think what he means is there's no. That's interesting. I mean, even we say there's okay. Well, it depends on how broad you find Tov and Ra. I cannot talk about this when I'm in this part of Eov right now, because I'm literally doing this chapter right now, like today. All right, so let's leave this suspended. You'll see where he's going with this when he gets to Klal Yisrael part. Lochein haaretz, not on the earth though. Okay, you can't have Tov and Ra on the earth. Roka haaretz al hamayim ki. Now this is a funny idea he says here. And this is going to raise questions about when the Malbim lived and what they knew and didn't know. In the beginning, the earth was covered with water, right? That's in the Bereshis, let the waters separate and then reveal dry land. So the earth used to be covered with water. V'amar bezeh behove la'ose l'roka. This is a good diuk here. It says la'ose hashemayim b'sforno and l'roka. These are all in the present tense. Why? As opposed to the past, it should be the past tense. Ki hu mechadesh b'chol yom ma'aseh bereshis, because God is continually renewing creation. V'kiyum habriya hi briya masmedes. This is going back to like the Radak's point. The preservation of the creation is a continual creation. Uva aretz yesh efsharus tamid. This is the part that I don't know what he held. Shetachzor el hatohu vavohu kvatchila. You could say that the earth might return to the tohu and vohu like in the beginning. Ki tchilas briasa haya shetiyim mechusa b'mayim chen tzarich lahodos chasdo al mashehu. So I don't know if he's saying that like the earth could go back into the depths if God doesn't preserve it there, or if he's saying that the entire, like, just as it used to be tohu vavohu and then God created everything, that everything could return to chaos. I'm not sure what he's saying. Because the Roka sounds like the earth on the waters, that like God brought the earth out of the waters and he's holding it there. I don't know if they thought, the Malbim.
Isn't there an idea of like that the flood coming in like once every 1300?
Well, that was a mistake, right? That was a mistake that the door Hapal made. What was that? Yeah, right. Yeah. So I don't. Malbim was at the dawn of geology, of like modern geology. So I don't know what they thought if the continents are afloat. I just don't know what they thought about the. I know they discovered tectonic plates, but I don't know what they thought about the continents at his time. But I was talking about, it seems like in the old, I think people did think, for example, that like islands were like floating on the ocean. So Ken suggested we still could say we can update this in a modern way to say that like there's nothing that necessitates that the surface of the earth has to be habitable and solid. Because there are planets where there is turbulent volcanic activity, or it's too hot, or it's a gas planet where there's no surface to speak of. So there is a chesed. You can say a chesed in the fact that this planet has land that is not on liquid or tohu vavohu. So I think that's like a good modern way to update it.
I feel like lately, isn't it extremely hard to find any other?
Yes.
Planet?
Yeah, you're right. But I'm saying with the Roka arts on mine, like that imagery. So we are on.
Not even life, but just find. Like I think there's a specific category of planets.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah.
That, like, have like land or water or like one or like or both Earth-like planets.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Right. I mean, we've got a couple of them in our solar system, right? Mars. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what that had like water.
Oh, fine. I was just talking about the solid part.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Ose orim gedolim v'gam b'zeh rabu chasadav she'shemesh tayir bayom v'hayirech v'layla. So this is going back to the natural. Also, the sun illuminates by day and the moon by night. So this is one of the wonders of Hashgacha. I don't think he's saying this is miraculous because he quotes Baruch Nafshi. Tirmos kol chaisol ya'ar ha'adam yinuach ba'amodakto v'zroach hashemesh yasefun ayin sham. So Baruch Nafshi is describing all the natural things that work out. That man goes to work during the day and the creatures come out at night, all that other stuff. Okay, now we get to Hashgacha miraculous. We're almost at the end, and we're going to theorize. Lamake. Now it explains the wonders. Through Machas Bechoros, God took Israel out with a strong hand. Those wonders were for the sake of redeeming Israel. Okay, remember I said before there's the Tov and the Ra on the earth? So I think this is what he's getting at. The Ra that befell the Mitzrim was for the good of Israel, Lohotiyam Misham, to take them out of there. The Achrakach, Bamesh Gazer Yamsuf Legazarim, the Hever Yisrael Besocho, Haya Ikar Hanes L'Ra'as HaMitzrim, L'Chalosim. There, the Ikar Hanes was for the punishment of the Mitzrim, to drown them, to destroy them. God could have saved us in another way. God hardened Paro's heart to chase after Israel. All of this was in order to drown the Egyptians in the Yam. Like Yisro says, that with the very thing, I always don't know how to translate that God gave the mitzvah mina connected mida, right? That's what that's referring to. Okay. Because they oppressed us and then God killed them for destroying us. Yeah. I think there is an idea that people say about that. I don't remember what it was. Okay, so now you have two examples. You have tov for us that brought about ra for the Egyptians in Makas Bechoros, and then ra for the Egyptians that brought about tov for us in Kriyas Yamsuf. Okay, so keep those in mind. Now this is a cool shot. Lemolich amo bamidbar. So before we read this, what did you think lemolich amo bamidbar? What chesed of Hashem is that? No, bamidbar. Yeah. Oh yeah, Kavo, the man, everything we need, right? He says different. Okay, and this is much better. Lamolich, who guided, limdu l'da'as darchei Hashem v'Torah. So, through guiding us in the midbar for 40 years, God taught us the ways of Hashem in His Torah. Ulahashlich l'milavavam Siurim haraim shenachlu mina mitzrim, and to cast out from their hearts the evil imaginings, fantasies that they inherited from the mitzrim. I don't know what the abbreviation is here. Drush Beis. This must be one of his other works. Through going in the midbar and making them suffer, nitosav lahem eretz Sichon v'Og. Then they got the land of Sichon and Og. So again, this is another case where they had to go through suffering, and that ended up being good for them. That's what it's referring to there, that they struck great kings and then he gave them their land as an inheritance. That even though there was a lot of midas hadin in the midbar and it was harsh conditions, it was from God's chesed and rachmim. Yeah.
Kind of funny to me because says that we learn Hashem taught us a lot about His ways through taking us through the midbar for a long time, but it kind of sounds like if you read the Torah, it sounds like that was not the ideal way for things to go.
Yeah.
Ideally, we wouldn't have done Chait and it would have taken a few days.
You mean Meraglim?
Yeah, Meraglim.
Yeah.
Right. Was it supposed to be 40 years? I don't know if he's referring specifically to 40 years.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to refer people to my Shadal's article, or Shadal's radical on the 40 years in the wilderness. So I don't know what the Malbim holds, but I do think it's interesting. Just the what do you call it? I didn't bury the lead. What if I told you that Israel were not condemned to wander in the wilderness for 40 years as a punishment for the sin of the spies? So he holds that was l'chatchila what the plan was. Okay, so I don't know where the Malbim falls on that, but even still, what Hashem did for us in the midbar was teaching us His ways. Whether it was our fault that we got stuck there for 40 years, He did teach us our ways, and there was midas din, but it was for our good. Okay. Last two paragraphs. This second to the last one we could not figure out. Okay, so this is the one I need help with the most. Shebishifleinu zachar lanu, that in our lowliness He remembered us. All of the nisim that He did for us in abundance in the past, ba'avar, hu haschala el ha'asid, is I don't know how to translate haschala here in the best way, but it's like a setup for the future. Shebechol es shiflenu, at every time that we were low, or that we are low, yizacher lanu, I don't know exactly how to nukudify that, hanisim hakadmonim, then He will recall for us the earlier miracles, v'yifrakinu mitzarenu, and remove us from our tzara. Ki kol asher yaseh Elokim, everything that God does, hu yihye l'olam, it will be forever. That's a quote from Koheles. V'im kein hanisim ha'v'hagula ha'kodemes shemurim la'asi lavo. If so, the miracles and the geula that occurred in the past are guarded for the future. So when I saw this, I was like, oh, this sounds like an important idea in the Seder. Yeah.
I think this is similar to something I was thinking about last time.
Yeah.
Which is maybe all the miracles that we mentioned earlier in this parak were not only miracles for them, but also part of setting up reality the way that Hashem wants it to be now.
Yeah.
And so, like, whatever things that come about, like, I guess, sorrows that happen in the world, Hashem set up the world with a framework that's able to, like, handle them.
Okay.
I don't know how that.
Yeah. Okay. I hear your approach. I just want to point out the thing. I don't know if this will help you refine it, but the thing that he is commenting on here, which he has not commented on until now, is what's the kila olam chasdo part. Okay, like the Radak is the one who said that it's like the universe is will continue to last. Here he's saying that the miracles that God did for us in the past were not just for our ancestors, but they're set up for us now, and they are le'olam chasdo because they're for the future. So I feel like that's a big clue. Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a Tehilim point that we would have thought that either our ancestors used up our merits or that we don't have merits, but and they did miracles, but that was like extra things onto a system that onto a natural system that we can only onto a system that by itself doesn't really it just affects their lives. I said my point there somewhere.
Okay.
But the point after that is that and therefore you would think that I forgot my point.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Isaiah.
Now, maybe to refine what I was saying before a little bit.
Yeah.
Like when Hashem set up like Torah and the land and gave the people all those ideas in Midbar, all you days, the Nisim, and also like that he did for us earlier.
Yeah.
And now that we have gotten that stuff and those teachings, those ideas, we're able to handle things. Like
okay.
But like we know how to approach them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's good. So that I think is going to merge with what Ken and I are going to say. Yeah. You know your point.
And therefore, this you should Chasdo is saying no. Even though yes, there is a reality that obviously the Avos did have very higher hashkafa than you guys, and perhaps even a different hashkafa class based on the desert. That doesn't. They're not isolated events, right? Each nace still has an impact on you guys insofar as you are members of. Insofar that I think 2 points that that because they exist within nature, so everything that exists within nature now gives effects, and God will always only do good effects. And B, insofar as you're part of Kol Yisrael, then how those effects specifically affect Bnei Yisrael will also continue to permeate.
Okay. All right. So let me do this. I'm going to read the last thing and then let's attempt to unify these approaches here because I also have something to add here. I think we're on the same track. I think we'll see. Last line is no sen lechem l'chol basar. V'gam mizono she'amru Chazal sheb'mazla talya. Even man's food, which Chazal say is lav b'zchus talya misala b'mazla, that is dependent on mazel. Be'emes hu hanosein lechem l'chol basar. God is still the one who gives bread to all flesh. Hagam shenir shezeh ba min hashemayim hamarecha. Even though it seems like it comes from the heavens and the constellations, hodu l'kel hashemayim. Give thanks to the God of heaven. Hu amanhi hamarecha. He's the one who governs the constellations. The ikar mazon v'tovos yotos mito. And I don't know why it says ikar, but the mazon and the tovos come from him. Shalkol yote mechasadav asher hem masmidos laolam. Everything comes from his chesed, which is perpetual. Okay, so the thing that we need to unify here is the theme of the Perikahim clearly is Hanhaga Tivis and Hanhaga Niflaos. Okay, so we need to take that into account. That's one thing. Second thing is his distinction between there's no Tov and Ra in the heavens, there's Embish and Sheker, but there's Tov and Ra on earth. And then there's this idea that there are cases where there's Tov to one party and Ra to the other party. I feel like he keeps on mentioning that point. Okay, so let me tell you what I think Ken said. And I think this does touch on aspects of what you guys are saying, but let's see if we can put it together. So again, this is like a last minute idea that we didn't really get a chance to develop. That Breshis is Tov Ma'od. Okay, everything God does is good. Okay, from our perspective, we divvy all that up into different categories, like Hanhaga Tivis and Hanhaga Nifla, Hanhaga Niflaos, and Tov and Ra, and Mazel and not Mazel. But it's all unified from God's perspective. From God's perspective, it's just Kilo Lam Chasdo, that God is just being Mashpia Tov to us. And the trick is to be able to see within these different categories the underlying unity, and to see that, for example, even the Ra that we suffered in the Midbar and all the pain and stuff like that was to bring us to Tov, because everything God does is Tov. And even the punishment that the Mitzrayim had was Mishpat, which keep Badavar Asher Zadolem, and Mishpat is part of God's Tov. And we can't mistake the multiplicity of manifestations for a multiplicity of underlying cause. It's all Hashem Echad, who is the Borei Olam, who created a world that's Tov Ma'od, and it's all Chesed from God. So that's what we came up with. Now, why did I think that was in line with the aspects of what you were saying? Jog my memory about what you were saying again. I'll see if I can link it together.
That the oaths that he did then prepared us to be able to handle difficult things now.
Okay, yeah. So that's going on the Lasi Lavo point. Okay, so I want to take that one step further, which is that when a human being does a tov, it could just be for that finite particular. Okay, so for example, like I don't know, like you rescue someone, right? So you're rescuing that person. Now there may be other effects and stuff like that. That's not part of your plan. You're just rescuing this particular. When God does tov for Klal Yisrael back then, he's not just taking Israelites out of Egyptian slavery. He's setting up the entire system to culminate in the giving of the Torah and the bringing of all of humanity to an ultimate state of shalom and Yedias Hashem. So that's everything that he did that was a nace, that was haskalah for them. Sorry, that was a nace for them, is a haskalah for la'asid. So all of God's tovos back then are paving the way for a continuation of that tov into now. So that's the point that I was saying. It was in line with that. Yeah, and Moshe, what was your point again?
Oh, my point was that we ran out of merits, that they only.
Okay, right. So that's another thing also, is that it is true that they can run out of merits, right? But the point is, it's not like this is you go to the store and if you don't have money, then too bad you don't get candy, and that's it. And the store doesn't really care. Here, the point is to bring Klal Yisrael to a state where he fulfills the promises to Theavos and then brings Klal Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael, and then we have all of humanity flourishing. That's why he helps us in our shiftless, because it's not just based on us and our merits. It's based on us contributing to this La'asid Lavo vision, So that's what we came up with for the Malbim. But I'll say, whether or not this is what the Malbim has, I do think that this has the same effect as what we theorized for why we should end the Seder with this, which is that it's very tempting when you do the Seder to focus entirely on Klal Yisrael and on miraculous Hashgacha. And what you need is a reminder that, yes, you need a reminder that, hold on. You need a reminder that Judaism, as seen through the eyes of the scholars of the Talmud, has its own unique religious orientation. Is this? This is. I think so. This is Rabbi's Torah Sinai essay, but he says, while basing himself on a cataclysmic event, revelation, it does not look to miracles as the source of its intimate relationship with God. God's revelation at Sinai was a one-time occurrence, never to be repeated. Well, that's another good example, by the way, right? This is expressed in Devarim 5:19, a great voice which was never heard again. In the mind of the Talmudic scholar, God continuously reveals himself not through miracles, but through the wisdom of his laws. These laws manifest themselves in the Torah, the written and the oral, and in nature, kilul and chasdo. Okay, meaning that in this night where we're preoccupied with Klal Yisrael and miracles and our fate, the Malbim also has this direction of realizing, no, this is all particular expressions of the Tov of Bereshis that God is doing as the Borei Olam. So it's the same point that we made, only our emphasis was different, but it's the same the same type of transformation that's trying to make us go through. So I think it is a good way to end the Seder. Now what remains to be seen is, and I would like to do the sugya. I heard Rav Pesach is doing Birkas Hashir. in his shiur. But because of shiur, Hallel Haggadah, and then the fifth cup, and see if we can like get an insight into where this is supposed to be in the Seder. Yeah.
I mean, at first I was thinking it was just about trying to recognize that you know we want to honor ourselves with you have to remember what our purpose is, and we can go back and read any one of the other Tehilim that we forgot on Shabbat.
Yeah.
About, we have a purpose here, but this is specifically trying to say that not just remember what our purpose was, but how the historical events are guiding us for that history.
Correct. Even in the exactly. Yeah, right. That's good. Okay, good parak. Another good parak. All right. So we will continue after Pesach with Mizrah Shilim Shabbos. Right. That's the next one.